Blur. Blur, the game, not the band, or as the Wikipedia lists it, Blur Racers, a 2010 racing game for the 7th gen, which is a culmination of combining Mario Kart and Test Drive Unlimited to create an arcade-style racer. It was developed by Bizarre Creations, which is a good sign since they had experience with series like Project Gotham Racing and combat games such as The Club or James Bond Bloodstone, which was sadly the last game the studio made before they got shut down by Activision. Although the shutdown in turn caused some of the team to go work on a little-known title with Playground games such as the Forza series and soon-to-be Fable, who also had a hand in the marketing strategy of this game.
That's awesome!
Racing's not about winning, it's about making friends!
Shut it, Pinky!
Blur, race like a big boy.
As hilarious as that commercial is, this game is not very gritty at all. In fact, you might even call it semi-cartoonish. The game is divided into two sections, multiplayer and career. Now you may think multiplayer has long since been discontinued, right? Well, not exactly. You see, the niche community of Blur fans have kept servers up with their own system. Sure, there might only be a few people playing, but stuff like this is always heartwarming to see. And since the game did have a focus on multiplayer, it can be a right laugh. Another interesting thing you may have noticed is that in this decade of Golden Age gaming, you can see licensed cars being tossed about. I mean, it's not exactly a destruction of a Ferrari, but this game already has a good selection of several more non-standard cars that you don't often see in set racing games anymore, including a Ford Transit with a bolted-in F1 engine, a pimped-out Opel Astra, Renault AC Schnitzer, and funky Volkswagens. Perhaps you could call it a touch of the times, but personally I think its being of its time is more of a plus to this game since it carries a very particular vibe. I mean, look at the ridiculous amount of lens flares. The equivalent today would be ultra-high graphics, meaning the game looks like it just got drenched in a tsunami. Career mode has you compete in event types to progress the minimal story. You have a race, checkpoints and destruction, which all function a little differently than you might expect, thanks to the power-up twist. The gameplay in general isn't very hard to get a hold of, and you won't find yourself being frustrated very much. Well, for most of the game that is. It does require a bit of strategy, but once you get a hold of it, it's not a bad time at all. And probably even better on a populated multiplayer where you have some proper competition. It shouldn't take too long to figure out if you watch the tutorial cutscenes narrated by NASCAR and IndyCar celebrity Danica Patrick. Fancy that. You get 8 power-ups. They're nothing too out of the ordinary, featuring things such as boost, firing spikes, EMP field. Now I know this is supposed to be a fun, turn your mind off game, but I'm genuinely curious about the lore of this universe since your score is presented as fans, and hinting as being a TV show or live event since you can catch a glimpse of fans watching the races. Maybe it's the dirty little secret of the Horizon Festival. Sort of like that one other racer explained as a TV show with a unique spin that came out that year. But imagine the kind of technology this universe has if they can somehow electronically flip and then repair your car. Send out electronic airstrikes, maybe even fix today's YouTube, or perhaps our main character's schizophrenic, I don't know. I didn't think about the lore this deeply while sitting on my arse playing Helltaker, that's for sure. Either way, you need to meet certain requirements to race bosses for their car, which you can also just not bother doing and skip to the next league, which is kind of funny. There's a few glitches, mostly during race intros, but they don't really affect gameplay, so it's acceptable. The race intros play during races, and I have to say, much like the car selection, the tracks are not quite what you might expect. Usually grimy, mucky or highly urban environments, for example Shutoko, Badlands, Brighton, several in LA, New York and San Francisco, and of course Mount Haruna. Yes, that Mount Haruna. Though catered to the drift enthusiast, I still haven't really figured out the handling model for cars like that, since they're classified by class and determined from very grippy to very drifty. Both have their pros and cons, but can often feel a little uncontrollable even when selecting a balanced car. Crashes aren't too bad to deal with since you take real damage from the power-ups, but it can get a little annoying not being able to stick a corner while multitasking the power-ups to both defend and offend. I was expecting the power-ups to be a little more spectacular too, since this isn't exactly a very subtle game. However, I'll take game balance over spectacle just about any day. In the US, Blur sold just about 500,000 copies, which is disappointing even with favourable reviews on their side, most of which can be boiled down to a slightly stale and somewhat repetitive single player but a brilliant multiplayer. Sadly, the game clearly isn't in its heyday anymore, so I can only show you a glimpse of what prime-era competition in this game was like, but many people still have fond memories of the game and revisit it. It seems by trying to stand out, Blur wasn't able to compete with the most audiences. 2010 was an extremely competitive year in the market, so you had to really think about what was worth getting and stick with it. I was too late to experience Blur to its fullest form, however there is still a dedicated community behind it, so don't feel like it's not worth a shot. One might even say it's more appreciated now than it was on release, with a re-evaluation happening after Activision closed down Bizarre in 2011 after 23 years of work. A Blur sequel was planned, and some leaks of it do exist, however it was too little too late, and it seems unlikely we'll see another Blur project anytime soon apart from a mobile spin-off, but who really cares about those? Although Blur might be seen as a product of its time, its preservation in the Internet archives has actually been quite educational, shining a light on what to appreciate about a game and the concepts proposed by it. I can certainly walk away from a game of Blur and feel satisfied. It's just a shame it never got to grow out of its first iteration. But as they say, life goes on, and fingers crossed it's lessons from games like these that shape the future. Thanks for watching.